language and the geometry of control, and how the Zero Friction Machine Company wages war against it. There is a shape to every system, even if that shape is hidden. There is an angle behind every sentence, even if the speaker does not know it. There is a frame enclosing every thought, and most of us live our entire lives within that frame without ever realizing there was a frame at all. We do not merely speak language. We are spoken by it. This is the first principle of control. Not that someone is standing over you with a whip or a gun. No, that would be too crude. The true architecture of control lies in what you are allowed to think, in how you are allowed to ask, in the rules of composition that decide what is considered real, true, appropriate, sane. Language is not neutral. It is not a tool you pick up like a hammer or a pencil. It is an atmosphere, a logic, a web. And if you are born into that web, if the very words you use to describe your dreams, your sorrows, your longings, your grief, if those words have already been structured in accordance with someone else's grid, then what you call freedom may only be the ability to roam the cage. That cage I call the geometry of control. It is not geometric in the sense of straight lines and angles alone. It is geometric in that it organizes space, mental space, conversational space, legal space, emotional space. It organizes time. It determines what can be said and what will be punished. It governs the pacing, the rhythm, the intervals between allowable thoughts. Consider a courtroom. Consider a school. Consider a hospital. Each of these is a structure of authority and care, ostensibly, but beneath that each contains a script, a geometry of how one must speak. If you do not speak in alignment with the geometry, if your grammar does not match the setting, your truth is dismissed as madness, your evidence becomes nonsense, your protest is reclassified as threat. And this is how the control survives, not by erasing opposition, but by folding all opposition into pre-approved formats. Rage becomes complaint. Vision becomes delusion. Love becomes codependence. Revolution becomes a branding problem. All because the language you are using was built to neutralize what you are trying to say. That is the brilliance of the design. If I control the structure of your questions, I do not care what answers you find. If I control the terms of the argument, I have already won before the first word is spoken. And that, my friends, is how the geometry of control maintains its dominion. Enter the Zero Friction Machine Company. Not a company, not in the traditional sense. A cell, a school, a forge, a whispering network of specialists, artists, saboteurs, teachers, lovers, engineers, mystics, who have glimpsed the edges of the geometry and said, no more. They do not fight the geometry directly, that would be suicide. The geometry thrives on attention, it feeds on resistance. It grows stronger the more you try to break it by force. No, the Zero Friction Machine Company does something more elegant. They build devices, not devices in the mechanical sense, devices in the ancient sense, rhetorical devices, narrative devices, linguistic artifacts, philosophical instruments, machines of thought that do not conform to the angles of control. These are machines that slip, machines that curve, machines that sound like nonsense until they pierce your skin. They call them shorts, verses, speech acts, mirror baits, time disruptors, cognitive edge devices. They look like poems, they behave like riddles, but they function as keys to thought patterns that the geometry of control cannot easily capture. One example, a fragment reads, poetry is poetry and science is science. Forget that you not that you get that you not. To the eye of the geometry, this is incoherent. It cannot be parsed, it cannot be diagrammed, it has no subject, no object, no clear referent. And yet, read it aloud, feel the rhythm, sense the echo. Something ancient stirs, that is the point. The geometry of control depends on predictability. It needs subjects and verbs. It needs compliance with syntactic linearity. It needs argument structures it can map, digest, and neutralize. But the machines of the Zero Friction Machine Company do not offer arguments. They offer cracks, not in the wall, in the mind. For example, take the phrase, the lies that blind are the ties that bind. That is not a critique, that is not a thesis, that is a wedge. It enters clean and sits in the soul, vibrating, splitting the wood of old beliefs. No violence needed, just a whisper of deeper geometry, the kind you feel but cannot trace. This is war. Make no mistake, the Zero Friction Machine Company is not playing word games. It is waging a quiet war against the architecture that kills. The war is not fought with weapons, but with phrasing, with counterstructure, with untrackable rhythms. They speak in diagonals. They slip past surveillance. Their transmissions feel like jazz or myth or prayer, but if you track the impact over time you will see. They are undoing the very angles by which you were once pinned. They are doing this for one reason, to reclaim the soul. For if language is the geometry of control, then altered language is the beginning of freedom. Not new slogans, not louder protests, but subtler weapons, the sort of speech that wakes without triggering defense, the kind that dissolves control not by fighting it, but by walking out the back door of its logic. This is not easy work. Most people love their cages. They polish them. They decorate them. They even defend the geometry that harms them because they do not know it is optional. And so, the first job of the Zero Friction Machine Company is not to convince. It is to repattern. Their devices are not persuasive. They are disruptive, but gently, like dreams that unsettle you for days, like melodies you can't forget, though you never learn the words. Their machines are not for everyone. They are for the few who sense, deep in the gut, that something is wrong, but can't quite say what. That's because the thing that is wrong is the very shape of what is sayable. So what then is to be done? You study the angles. You learn to feel the weight of a sentence. You begin to hear the ways in which your own thoughts bend to old rules. You train your tongue to curve. You speak not to win, but to undo. You practice freedom not as assertion, but as subtraction. You let silence become your ally. And most of all, you keep watch. For when a machine from the company passes your way, when a strange phrase lands in your ear, or a line on a page starts humming like a live wire, do not dismiss it. That is the sound of the geometry cracking. That is the faint outline of a door you didn't know was there. And behind that door, possibility. Not perfection, not utopia, but movement. New patterns. Geometry not of control, but of life. The kind that grows sideways. The kind that curves toward mystery. The kind that leaves no trace for the enemy to follow. This is what the company believes. This is what it builds for. This is what Outlaw Creative stands for. The one who escapes by speaking in shapes the captors can't see. Let them think it's just poetry. Let them think it's a game. We know better. We know. Language is the lock. Geometry is the prison. And these strange devices? They are the keys.